Hello and welcome to today's edition of Severe Thunderstorm Outlooks. We still have some level 2 slight risk areas to talk about, especially today and tomorrow, and more may pop up in the future as our severe thunderstorm pattern continues. We're looking at today's outlook here, and what you clearly see is a carved out area here where no thunderstorms are going to form, very stable area here. But we do have on the edges of the advancement of that stable air still some severe weather here to talk about. And then on the so-called return flow side of that high, we have instability building up through the plains. So let's break these down here today. Slight risk is what's yellow on the screen here. The level 2 out of 5 talks about storm coverage for the most part, and it's divided into two areas, almost a solid area, but northern Alabama and Mississippi, and then from Charlotte all the way up to the Beltway, all the way up to New York City is a level 2 with a large level 1 marginal risk surrounding that. First thing I do want to point out is that the tornado risk is really being highlighted in this area here from Washington to Baltimore, almost up to Philadelphia. So the hatching you see here is the Storm Prediction Center now attaching a percentage chance of an intensity of a storm tornado, not just any tornado. So it kind of gives you an idea. So there are three intensity levels here, and this is intensity level 1. So basically the interpretation is you just add these two percentages here. So you got 42 and 37. So what's that? 79% chance of basically that intensity of tornado, EF0 or EF1, and it's not really high. So while the other stronger tornadoes are not impossible, their percentages are a lot lower. And then, of course, this is just a percentage chance of any tornado forming within 25 miles. That brown there is 5%. And then if I kind of zoom in on all this, here's the wind risk associated with this southeastern pattern, I guess you could say, on the front side of the stable high. Pretty high wind risk, 30% chance of a severe wind gust, greater than 58 miles per hour from Washington up into southern New Jersey, including all of Delaware for today. That's a pretty high percentage, actually. And then we'll come back to this other area here on the return flow side. We do have a level 2 percentage from technically northern Kansas straight through the heart of Nebraska and all the way up to Minneapolis. Minneapolis, Sioux Falls, Sioux City, and Kearney, probably the largest cities affected by this potential area. Embedded in that, there is a 2% risk of any strength tornado. They did not assign the SPC a category to this. It doesn't mean that there might not be, the interpretation of that is that most of the tornadoes, if they occur here at all, would be on the weak side with no confidence of assigning a percentage of intensity so far anyway. And then this is the hail risk, and it covers that same slight risk area, 15% chance of a 1-inch hailstone or bigger within 25 miles. And then the hatching, which I did not include on here. Sorry about that. I meant to put that on there, but there is a hatching for the hail here. Mostly this is suggesting that all the hailstones will remain below 1.5 inches probability-wise. 1 inch is the criteria for a hailstone being severe anyway. So that's the breakdown on that. And then for the wind risk, I do need to kind of zoom in a little bit on that because they do have something to say. So even though the probability of getting a severe wind, which is greater than 58 miles per hour, is only 5% in the brown, it does suggest that we have an intensity category to talk about. So that's how that breaks down there through central Nebraska down into central Kansas. NATOcast does talk about this tornado risk being at 5%, right centered on the nation's capital there, with a 3% risk surrounding that, and a little bit of activity here along that 2% that the SPC outlined, but staying pretty much in Minnesota on that. The tornado risk doesn't show up here on CSUs, but does have a little bullseye again right around Washington, D.C., but a very small compact area. The wind risk is being highlighted actually from Arkansas over into northern Mississippi, interestingly. So it doesn't really coincide with the SPC's forecast, but we'll see how that turns out today. Then we go to Friday. We have a little bit of marginal risk hanging out in central areas of South and North Carolina, coastal areas, also right in the heart of Georgia and a little bit of Alabama too. And then the level 2 risk we'll highlight here a little bit closer. That is this right here. So pretty much, yes, a little bit of northern Kansas, but mostly right along I-80 here from Lincoln to Grand Island over to North Platte, right along the river, but as far north as Amesville as well. And then coinciding with that, the individual risk, severe wind risk, is highlighted in the exact same slight risk area. So the percentage is 15%, with a little bit of highlight for maybe a little bit more intensity right in that area there of hatching. And then hail, again, slight risk is here, 15% chance. Hail, a little bit backwards on that, not quite getting that far off to the southeast. The NATOcast product for tomorrow, Friday, is actually showing a little highlight around northern Illinois, which I think is interesting. Keep an eye on that, you folks. Illinois has been battered this year by severe weather, so I'm sure that's one of the reasons I would show it anyway, but I think it's just a little interesting that that's highlighted like that. There is a little bit of hail risk with that little area there on tomorrow in northern Illinois and also back in Nebraska where the main slight risk was issued. And then the wind probabilities are at their highest, 30% chance, right in the central part of the Carolinas. Then on to Saturday, marginal risks, again, as you know, day 3, which is what this is, have room to become slight risks or greater. I don't think it'll go greater than slight risk, but you should be on notice there in Ohio, over to Pittsburgh, West Virginia, parts of Kentucky. That's a marginal risk, and back along northern Idaho, mountainous areas of that state, and also Montana as well. CSU's outlook for Saturday does show a little tornado risk up around Long Island, interestingly enough. Doesn't really talk about hail risk much at all, and puts a little modest wind risk areas there and there. And then beyond that, there really isn't a lot showing up on the CSU outlook, and certainly nothing from the SPC that would suggest widespread coverage of severe weather. Of course, my job is to keep an eye on that for you. This is the supercell composite for the next 7 days. Not surprisingly, it is showing basically the next 2 days and a little bit of this activity out on the eastern seaboard as well. That's the first 7 days. So that goes from the 20th through the 26th. Then the next 7 days, 27th through the 2nd of September. A little bit of a kind of a maximum there around Montana and the Dakotas up into Canada. But what's shutting down a little bit is this ring of fire, which I like to call the arc of fire. Not really showing up much there, but perhaps that kind of coming back on week 3 with the highest percentages of supercells in Minnesota and down there in the monsoon flow in Arizona.